Welcome to the pre-taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have been very, very important to the making of that history. This is our history tape number 308, and we will be playing in June 1997, and it's going to be very, very exciting that we bring forth the Robertson family. And when we get into the Robertson family, we're going to be so pleased to welcome, first of all, the patriarch on the dais today of that family, Mr. Frank Robertson. And Frank, I want to welcome you to the set, young man.
Thank you, Ruthie. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, and you brought two beautiful ladies.
Yes, I did.
Oh, yes.
I certainly did.
Yes, you really did, and you had them following you around, coming into the studio here. That's great.
Thank you for having us, Ruthie.
Yes, and Bobby Robertson, married to sweet Frank. We're just so glad to have you on.
Thank you, Ruthie. This is a privilege.
Yes, it's wonderful. And Joe Robertson Campbell, my longtime buddy and friend, and just a wonderful lady in the city of Grand Prairie that's really related to Frank and to Bobby by marriage, and since he is your wonderful brother. And we're coming together today to talk about your mama.
Thank you.
Anna, and she's a wonderful lady. Welcome to the set, Joe.
Thank you, sweetie.
All right. Let's begin with Mr. Frank. And Frank, if you'd look right out into your camera right out here,
All right.
and let's establish your genealogy. Tell us about your parents and your brothers and sisters, and something about your early life.
Well, thank you, Ruthie. Of course, I only have a sister, Ruthie. I was not privileged to have a brother.
All right.
But Joe has been my close friend and my sis, and I love her. My parents were Alvy, most commonly known in these parts by Buck Robertson, and my sweet mother, Anna. I was not born in Grand Prairie, Ruthie. I was born in Dallas, but we moved into the Shady Grove area when I was very young, and I went to the Grand Prairie schools when I was very young.
Okay.
And have been here, I guess, all of my life so far.
All right.
And have seen a lot of things happen in the city. My grandfather was Marcus Robertson. He himself lived in Dallas most of his life, but two of his brothers were pioneers in this city.
Yes.
One of his brothers was Bob Robertson, who Ruthie had a livery stable here on Main Street, which would have been directly across from where the old fire station was.
All right.
And his other brother was Frank, my namesake.
All right.
He had four sisters who lived generally in the McKinney, up in that area, but Grand Prairie is a wonderful city, and we've seen a lot of wonderful things happen in this city in my lifetime. And we're beginning to see wonderful things happening now, Ruthie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Frank, where'd you go to elementary school?
I went to Shady Grove.
All right. Remember any old good, wonderful teachers there that impressed you, that really set you on the right track?
Ruthie, we had a husband and wife teacher. It was a two-room school, Mr. and Mrs. Schultz.
All right.
And you would sit in grades 1 through 4 in her room, and 5, 6, 7 in his room. That school still stands out there, and when I was on the school board, we were happy to make some additions and some improvements to that school. And then I came to Grand Prairie High School, rode the bus when the floods would let us come in.
All right.
But I graduated in 1942.
1942 is a magic year.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty.
As I recall, Grand Prairie had a population of 1,800 at that time.
Who was the principal of the school, or the superintendent, or some of your teachers when you came to Grand Prairie
Well,
High School?
Mr. Roberts was the superintendent.
L.A. Roberts.
Ms. Wood was our English teacher. And
Who was your favorite, and what was your favorite subjects?
I guess Tom Pruitt, who was a football coach and
Yes.
was our math teacher.
Yes.
Tom was one of my favorites and has been through the years.
Yes. Okay. Academically, if you played football, what was your favorite academic subject?
Well, I guess
Math.
it would have been math. And I only played football for 1 year and broke some bones, and Mother and Dad felt it best I get out of that. And
Yes, they pulled you right off the line,
right,
didn't they?
pulled me off the line, and I was in the band then for about 2 years in Grand Prairie High.
All right.
Graduated in 1943. 42.
All right, let's leave you graduating in 1942 because we got to get Bobby kind of caught up
Oh,
with all
all
of
right.
this good stuff.
We're good.
Bobby, would you look out into your camera and tell us about your family, your genealogy?
Ruthie, I was born in Itasca, Texas, which is a little town south of Fort Worth, and I believe a population of only about 1,200, and not much bigger than that right now.
Yes.
My mother and father both worked in the mills there, the cotton mill and the twine. I have one sister, Joyce Burns, who lives in Fort Worth, or Hearst area, excuse me. And then I have a brother, Cecil Douglas, who lives in El Paso. And Cecil did graduate from Grand Prairie High
All right.
in 1953. Joyce and I both graduated in Itasca. So we were not privileged to go to school in Grand Prairie like the others have been. I can remember my mother made the first garments from the fabric that was made at the twine mill in Itasca. She made the first garments that were shown at the Texas Fair in
how
Dallas.
wonderful.
I can remember that, and she was so pleased. But she made us dresses, and we had bedspreads and drapes from the fabric, and we enjoyed that.
I need the name of your mother and father so we get
Okay.
that in our documentary.
Cecil Douglas
All right.
and my mother, Mattie Lou Douglas.
All right. What was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Gibson, Mattie Lou Gibson Douglas.
How wonderful. That's
And they moved, or we did move here, in 1945, I believe. I lost my father about 8 years ago. Mother still resides in the little house that they moved into about 52 years ago,
Yes.
down on Pine Street,
Yes.
and lives alone and does real well.
All right. That's wonderful. Now tell me about going to school in Itasca, your elementary grade. Do you have a favorite teacher?
I guess maybe my first grade teacher was my favorite teacher.
Okay.
She had, Mrs. Clark, she had worked, taught school there for a number of years. In fact, she taught my mother, all of her brothers and sisters, which there were 8 of them, and then she taught my sister and I.
Oh.
And she was just wonderful.
Real special.
She was very special. All the patience in the world, which she needed.
Your high school graduation date?
1943.
1943. That was a good year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was, and a great accomplishment in my life.
Yes. To get out of the cage is
That's
just wonderful,
right.
isn't it?
That's right.
We're going to get back and get you and Frank together in just a few minutes,
Sure
find out
thing.
how you met and everything. But Joe, let's tell us about your birth date and where you were born and a little bit about your mother and father.
I think my mother said she found me under a chip somewhere.
Yes, I see. So you've
But
been
I was-
acting like that ever
I've
since.
been acting
haven't
that way ever since.
you? Yes.
But I was born in Arlington, just a block off of Highway 80, in the same house that my mother was born in.
Oh, how wonderful.
And I think that it belonged to my grandmother. And in 1936, when we built our house, my folks were able to get this old house, and they added that on to the back of the building or the house that we built, and that's been a long, long time ago. But it was always special because we had part of that old house in our home place.
Yes.
But I was born in Arlington, but I think my mother got caught there and was not where we were supposed to be because they lived in Dallas at the time.
All right.
But I guess my most pleasant memories of childhood would be Shady Grove, and we moved out there in 1929 in the country,
Yes.
and it was wonderful. We had a tank, and
Near the Watson Cemetery and all of the good
no,
stuff.
it was out Roy Orr
Right, or
and the
right.
railroad track.
Oh, that's great.
And the farm belonged to our uncle, McLaughlin,
Yes.
and that family's old and in this part of the country too. But I remember that we had a high line that ran through our pasture, and there was a tank. And my mother always told us that Rawhead and Bloody Bones was down there, and for us not
Stay
to
away from
dare get there. And we were very careful about not getting around those high towers also. But we love living in the country.
Tell me about your mom, what she did for a living and how wonderful she was and drove to Dallas and took care of people. And
She said, I hope before I die I can work in Fort Worth. She had driven to Dallas for 50 years and faced the sun going and coming.
Yes.
But she was a social worker for Dallas County Welfare. Loved people, loved doing, loved her family.
Yes.
And sacrificed herself for us over and over and over again.
And you've commemorated her life with the purchase of a beautiful dining room set in the Copeland Home Museum. And I thought that was such a tribute to her, and it's beautiful, beautiful addition to our museum.
She was aware of that, and our whole family is pleased that it's there. It's gorgeous and real old-timey and kind of like the table we used to sit around.
And did you graduate from Arlington schools or what?
No, I graduated from Grand Prairie High School.
So you are a pure Gopher, even if it's for 1 year or so, like
No,
I am.
I went 4 years.
4 years.
I went to Irving for 1 semester. Started at Sunset, went to Irving for a semester, and then went to Grand Prairie the rest of the time. And my love was Tom Pruitt.
Yes.
I was his assistant and got to run little errands for him.
Yes.
But I guess my favorite teacher was Mr. Ian Bodine.
All right.
And I loved his geometry classes and couldn't work a problem today if I had to. But he was a real special love and a real encouragement to his students, and still is today.
We saluted him 3 or 4 weeks ago when we dedicated the Walking Seniors Trail, because he's the only person that we could find in Grand Prairie that was here in 1909 when we celebrated the 88th birthday of Grand Prairie. And that was wonderful to find that young man, and he's so alert and wonderful. And
They were real appreciative of that too.
Yes,
It was
all
real
right.
sweet.
Name your family.
My family, I have 2 children.
All right.
Steve Campbell lives in Midlothian now
All right.
and is teaching school in Cedar Hill High School.
All right.
Still going to college, working on another degree, and has retired from the police department. And he used to be in the police here in Grand Prairie, also in Arlington, and was a chief at Cedar Hill for a number of years. And then my daughter works for a Commonwealth Title Company in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
Have 4.
You'd give us her
mean-
name.
Julie
All
Carson.
right. Okay.
And I have 4 mean grandchildren.
Oh, great.
That are the light of my life. Take
maternal
after their
grandmother. Maternal grandmother, okay. All right. You want to name the 4 grandchildren?
Randy, David, Melissa, and Becky.
All right. That's wonderful. We're going to get back with you in a few minutes, Miss Jo, and some of the things you do, but let's get back with Frank. Frank, tell me about you and Bobby getting together and finally getting married, and we have these wonderful family that we're going to ask Bobby to name in a few minutes.
Very good. Well, Ruthie, I returned from the service in 1946.
What
and
service?
I was in the Navy,
You were in the Navy.
and Mother and Dad had bought the property on the corner of Small Street and Beltline,
All right.
which was about an 8-acre plot. You may recall the
Yes.
big 2-story Austin stone home.
Yes.
And I came back there. We were living in Shady Grove when I went into service, and Mother and Dad had to sign for me to go. I was just 17 years old, but at that time everybody wanted to get into action, you know.
Yes.
But I came home, and Joe and I had gone to a Baptist church in Shady Grove all of our childhood, and I began going to the First Baptist Church here in Grand Prairie, and met Miss Bobby.
All right.
I guess about June of that year, and we were married that December, Ruthie, and just celebrated 50 years of marriage this past December.
Yes, you did. Yes, you
ma'am.
did. Isn't that?
On December the 13th, and it was a Friday night, we were married, Ruthie.
Oh, that is
So
just
Friday the 13th is not unlucky.
All right, who is the preacher that married you all at the First Baptist?
It was my uncle, who's now deceased.
Yes. That is wonderful to have your uncle in the ministry that could perform that.
Yes.
Bobby, do you have anything to add to that? Was he pretty hard to catch, or was he a pretty easy
Well, you know,
snare?
at the time, there were several of us in the church that were single and looking
Yes.
for everything that came along, came back from service. We were really
Yes,
impressed.
yes. Uh-huh.
But fortunately, I did meet Frank. There were a group of us that ran around together. So he fell right in, and I think Joe did too.
Yes.
There was a place for them. And Frank and I dated. I was really impressed with Frank when I met him, and thoroughly enjoyed the times that we were out together and our courtship.
When he proposed, did you
And
say yes immediately?
I thought you'd never ask.
I love it. I love it.
But we were married in December, and on Friday
That's
the
great.
13th. So I've often said to others, we were really asking for it, to take a chance. But it's been a happy wed life, and we have 3 children.
I'd like you to name your children and grandchildren. We're going to get
Okay.
back with Frank and ask him another question in just a
Okay.
minute.
Larry is our oldest, and he lives in Quitman. And he and his wife, Marilyn, he's in the car business, and they have 2 daughters and 1 little grandson, which we have 1 little great-grandson.
All right.
And he is a little stinker, cute as a bug. And then we have Carolyn, who is living between Mineola and Grand Saline. She teaches high school English in Grand Saline High School. She has no children. And her husband is retired from the Dallas Police Department, John Landers. And then David is our youngest, David Robertson. He lives in Duncanville. He's with the Dallas Auto Auction and has 1 young son, Reed, who has just had his 13th birthday.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we have the 3 grandchildren. And
you have a
now,
bunch to
great.
get together for Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything.
It gets that way, right.
All right. Mr. Frank,
Yes, ma'am.
now I'd like just a few things for you to say about your mom, and then I want you to get into your wonderful community service here in the city and the fact that you've been an insurance mogul over all of these years, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Ruthie, I don't know what you say about my mom. She was a sweet lady. I've seen Mother help people when really she didn't have the means to help people, but she found a way. Mother was a person who was good to be around. Mother was an excellent cook. She was an excellent mother. She worked hard all of her life, Ruthie. I can remember the washing she did over the pot and the hog killings and cooking and making the sausage sacks. And she worked hard, but she was one that she loved her kids, she loved her family, and we miss Mother very, very much.
I know that you do.
Yes, we
All
do.
right, tell us about getting into insurance and to getting into the scene of Grand Prairie. I remember when you were on the school board, and I know you've done other things before you became a council member, and you're into your lodge. Tell us something about your life, Frank.
Oh, Ruthie, there's not a whole lot to tell. I got in the insurance business when I came out of the service. I worked for the Texas Pacific Railway for a little while, and was not real happy with that job, and became involved with an insurance company in Dallas and the old Texas Employers Group, and stayed with them for some 28 years, and was offered a position with Marsh & McLennan, which is an international insurance brokerage firm in Dallas. And I went with them in 1980 and retired there in 1991. I was a senior vice president when I retired, and had some wonderful experiences with some very fine organizations that I did business with here in the Metroplex, and in fact all over the country. I don't know, our kiddos were in high school back in the late 60s. Carolyn was in Grand Prairie High and David was over at Adams, and with kiddos in the schools, I just felt like maybe it was incumbent upon me to render a service if I could to the community, and I was approached about being appointed to a vacancy on the school board and accepted that. And then I served about 9.5 years on the school board, Ruthie, and we saw a lot of changes, a lot of good changes in that time. And I guess I'm happy to say I had maybe a little part in that.
Oh, yes, you help make a difference, and that's
Well,
important.
I appreciate you saying that, but our schools were still small town at that time, and I
Yes.
think we've made a lot of good changes. After a while, that became something I didn't think I wanted to do anymore, so I declined to run, I guess it was in 1974, and devoted my time to my job, and that paid off for me, Ruthie. And then as things began to perk up around Grand Prairie, I guess in 1964 it was, there was an at-large vacancy, and I decided maybe I could make some contribution to the city, and I was fortunate that the people felt that I might make a contribution, and I was elected and have been reelected. And this has been a wonderful experience. We're seeing a lot of things happen, as you well know, in the city of Grand Prairie, Ruthie, and I think we're just on the verge of seeing a lot of things happening in our city, and I'm proud to say maybe I had a little bitty part in that. I was very active in the lodge here for a while, and my travels precluded me being as active as I'd like to have been, but I'm still a member of the Samuel Hamilton Lodge here in Grand Prairie. And,
Aren't you a Rotarian also?
Yes, ma'am. I just came from there a moment ago from our Rotary meeting today. I've been in Rotary since, I guess, 1963. We were in Waco for a brief time, and I was honored to be president of the Northwest Waco Rotary Club. And when we came to Grand Prairie back in 1967, I joined our club here, and I'm still a member, and enjoy every Friday meeting with the fellows and the ladies. I'm sorry, Ruthie, we have quite a number of ladies in our club now. But I'm still in the Rotary Club and plan to stay in that.
And you're still on the council?
Yes, ma'am.
All
still
right.
on the council.
And Frank and I, when we greet each other, we always say, how long have we been doing this? Frank, we're going to let you rest a minute. I need to get with Bobby a minute. And have you ever worked out of the home? And if so, what did you do? And give us a little rundown on that, Miss Bobby.
I have, Ruthie. All my working years was in banking.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with Grand Prairie State Bank. And I think everybody can remember that. My sister and I were working, I said that was the only time, we were working for an insurance company. And Dallas went into the Grand Prairie State one Saturday morning to cash checks. Mm-hmm. And if you remember Ernest Avery,
yes,
who was here, he cashed our checks. He noticed we were working in Dallas but lived in Grand Prairie.
yes.
So he asked my sister and I if we'd like to work in the bank, if we'd ever thought about it, which we had never, and thought no more about it. On Monday night, Mr. Avery and Mr. Reddick was a vice president
Yes.
there. They came to our house and hired Joyce and I
How wonderful.
to work at the Grand Prairie State Bank. And that's, I don't think I have an application filed with the bank yet.
Yes.
Because when we came back to Grand Prairie in 1967, I came back and worked part-time. And then in about 6 or 8 months, it worked into a full-time job. All in all, I believe I had almost 30 years with the bank.
With the bank.
And I retired about 4 years ago. I thoroughly enjoyed banking, worked in several departments, and met a lot of nice people. I think that's the most thing that I miss,
Yes.
are the nice people that you, and friends that you make.
That come into the bank.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's your family, your
That's
banking
right.
family, isn't
That
it?
is.
Yes.
But I did retire about 4 years ago, and I have enjoyed just sort of doing what I want to do, and some things I don't want to do.
Yes. All right.
Around the
all right.
house.
Around the house. Honeydews
And
that
around
Frank
town,
does.
always ready to go at the drop of a hat. Let's go when you get a phone call.
That's it. Joe, how about your business tenure, my dear?
I've been causing trouble with this accounting firm 34 years.
Yes.
And
Mr.
somebody
Fredby
asks
Bryan was
if I'm
so
going to
wonderful.
retire, and I
Yes.
said they can just haul me out.
Yes.
I jokingly made the remark when I started working for the accounting firm, it was Lee and Bryan,
Yes.
and Mr. Lee died, and then it was Fred Bryan.
Is that Ernest Lee?
Yes, Ernest Lee.
All right.
Then it was Bryan and Kerbo, and then it was Fred B. Bryan and Associates, and so I've jokingly said I've killed off 3 bosses and I'm working on 2 more.
Oh my, that is
But I
true.
do love what I do, and it's enjoyable. I feel that I accomplish something every day. You help somebody every day, and that's a real joy. in my
Besides
life.
being the queen of Seroptimists and have held probably the highest elected office in the regional and the district and everything, and serve on foundations for Seroptimists, you also, don't you serve on the hospital board?
Yes, I do. That's been a real joy. Learn a lot about your community and how it operates, how people respond to the needs.
Yes.
And we have so many in this little town. But it's such a wonderful place to be. I was telling Frank the other day, and Bobby too, before Mother's Day I had gone out to the cemetery, the Watson Cemetery.
That's where your mother's
That's
interred.
where all the Watsons are, and
Yes.
our legacy. But Frank and I can go 2 miles to Southland and 2 miles to Watson and visit all of our kinfolks, you know?
Yes, yes.
It's quiet and peaceful and beautiful, and it's real soul satisfying to be able to have your roots right here and not have to go to Kentucky or Illinois or North Carolina to find them.
Yes.
But our heritage is rich, and we're so grateful for that privilege. We're lucky people.
And all three of you all are First Baptist, right? You haven't said anything about the church or anything real exciting. Which
Well,
one?
I'm a challenge to the preacher
I
all
bet
the
you are a
time.
challenge to the preacher. Yes, yes.
But we do enjoy Jerry Poteet. He's wonderful.
Yes.
And I work with the senior adult, the oldest people in our church, 72 to heaven
All right.
is the way I label our department. And Bill Arnold is our Sunday school superintendent.
Okay.
We enjoy that fellowship.
That is great. That's wonderful. Frank, are you proud of the racetrack? You're on the sports authority. We have the authority right here with us, Joe.
I know.
Ruthie, yes, I am proud. You know, I'm not a race enthusiast as such, but we have a beautiful, beautiful facility out there
Magnificent.
that is just absolutely unreal. And I think it, whether you like horse racing or not, Ruthie, I think it has put Grand Prairie on the map. I was amazed. Our mayor was telling us he was in Washington last week, and the cabbie was asking he and the person who was with him where they're from, and Mayor England said, well, we're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he said, well, whereabouts? And he said, well, we're from Grand Prairie. Oh, that's where you have the new racetrack. Now, this is a
Yes.
cab driver in Washington, D.C.
All right.
We've gotten a lot of national publicity, and I think good things are yet to come out there, Ruthie. We're going to see a lot of good development in that area, and I think it's just great that we got it put together, and it's tremendous success, and so many good things are happening in our town, Ruthie, and I'm just happy to work with you and the other 7 council members to see some good things brought about, Ruthie. It's a real pleasure, real pleasure.
Well, it's wonderful to have you all on the show today. I want to thank you all for sharing the legacy of the Robertsons and the Watsons, and your mother's name was a Watson, I believe, before she married. And to tell us, we didn't even ask Bobby how she liked her mother-in-law, but I know she must have. So we did.
She was a very dear person.
It's wonderful for y'all to share that with us. And
Do we have any time left, Ruthie?
we have 1 30-second time.
Well,
you
that's-
can say it. That's
I was just going to say my mother and father lived in a log cabin out on 360, which is now in one of the parks in Arlington. And 360 at that time was a 1-lane dirt road. And
Was it called Watson Road
yes,
then?
ma'am. It was Watson Road, and of course Arlington Downs was there, and have a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories.
Well, y'all have brought a tremendous record to us today, and I want to thank y'all for being with us. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.
Thank you for inviting us, Ruthie.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for
Been a
being here.
privilege.
Yes.